There are things that we need to acknowledge about each other and respect about each other. You know, I come from my professional background, you come from your professional background, and we come together and compromise in the middle to make sure that you get the content that you're happy with, and I produce content that I'm happy with.
Welcome to the Real Pulse of Real Estate, where we discuss the true ins and outs of the housing market. Welcome back to another episode of Real Pulse of Real Estate with our special guest, Brian Murray. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I am well. So for this episode, we've already sort of dug into, you've been the videographer, the guy behind the scenes, right? For myself and others. One thing that you and I have always talked about that not a lot of people understand is our process.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, also, I'm just going to apologize. You can edit this out. I'm trying my best not to but...
No, you can
Okay.
I know I have to do big edits on this. See, for the people listening at home, what you don't realize, I work on these pretty hard. And so sometimes I'll say things like, I'll just go right out. And I'll miss a few to keep the flow of conversation, but that's part of the podcast magic.
It's purposeful.
Yeah,
that you miss. But no, let's dive into that a little bit of process. Let's start with Adam's answers and Adam's stories, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess Sunday stories is what we're calling them. Or
I don't know if we ever really had a title for them.
We never really did. I'm just kind of coming up with it as we go along. However, process-wise,
yes,
we don't shoot just one video and call it a day and you edit it and I post it the next day.
No. So what we do in our process, Adam will come over to my house, typically around 11 a.m., and I will have everything set up for one series of videos. And so typically I always set up for Adam's answers first. And so what I'll do is I will light the room. So I start with lighting the hallway in the background, the stairs you see in the background as well, and then lighting him in the foreground. So I get everything set up in my hallway. I set up my camera, I check audio levels, and then I sit there for an hour and I ponder things and wait for Adam to show up. And when Adam arrives, we shoot a series of videos. So essentially, we will shoot 4 videos at a time within the space. And so Adam will bring 4 changes of shirts with him, sometimes pants. You never really know. And
just depends.
We go through and we do 4 quick episodes right there. Usually takes anywhere from about half an hour to an hour.
Yeah.
Depending on how cheeky we're feeling with each other and how much we goad and poke at each other while we're doing it.
How many times I'm not paying attention and forget to that light in the doorway between the hallway and the kitchen.
Adam does have a penchant for kicking the light that illuminates the background.
Look, I'm trying to be brand friendly. I fucking hate that light. I don't know how it is, but every time mentally, because I'm always like, the second we stop filming, I'm checking my phone for what I missed in between the videos, right?
Right.
You know me. Normally it's I'm texting clients right now about a for sale by owner and all this other stuff. So I'm immediately texting.
Yeah.
And the light, guys, the light that I'm talking about, that I'm referencing, is on the ground facing upward. It's a bright studio light.
Yes.
I miss it every time and I somehow kick it or trip over it.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I'll be standing there, looking at my phone and being like, okay, we have the next one. And all of a sudden I hear a big boom. And he goes, Gah!
Yep.
And
every time.
And it's understandable too, because I know for you how moment to moment you have to be with your clients, that sometimes in the middle of filming, we just have to pause for a second so you can take a phone call. Sometimes you have to send a text message. Even recording today, you're working on a FSBO. And so you're trying to make sure you have everything taken care of for that. Yeah. It's a process.
Yeah.
But we film 4 Adam's answers at a time, change of clothes, everything. Then I move the entire setup for the next series for the Sunday stories. And then we go upstairs to my studio where the podcast is recorded, and we do the Sunday stories up there. And so we do 4 at a time for each of them. That gives him a total of 8 videos.
Yeah.
Once Adam has those 8 videos recorded, his part of the process is basically done.
Yeah, I just peace out after that.
What I do is I create the content for different formats. And so we used to do it for Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok all at the same time.
Yes.
And we've since modified the process to make it a little quicker so that we only do it for Instagram and TikTok. because the video aspect ratios for Facebook, which were 1920 by 1080, I'm going to get really technical here. You can also use the Instagram format, which is 1080 by 1080, which gives you more of a square look rather than the widescreen look you would see at cinema.
Yeah.
And so we typically just do the 1080 by 1080 for Instagram and Facebook, and then the 1080 by 1920, which is the elongated vertical format for TikTok. And then you've even started posting the vertical ones on Instagram.
So essentially what I'm doing now is the square that we were using for Instagram and Facebook, I'm now using for Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google My Business.
Ooh.
I'm also uploading those to YouTube Shorts.
Okay.
I'm utilizing that square in 4 different social medias. The TikTok format has become so popular, Instagram Reels. If any of you are on TikTok and you have that one friend that won't do TikTok, and we all know what I'm talking about, where you're doing TikTok, they won't get a TikTok, and they're sending you an Instagram reel from a TikTok that was hilarious 3 months ago. I am uploading the reels now for Instagram. So TikTok and Instagram reels are the same format. So with 8 videos that we shoot, 4 for each series that we're doing.
Yes.
Because they're a little bit different. One is just sort of sharing stories about real estate.
Correct.
And like my experiences. The other is answering questions of home buying or home selling or whatever's happening in the current market. And with those 8 videos, we're able to go across YouTube, LinkedIn, Google, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. So we've got 6 platforms.
Yep. Yeah, they're multi-purpose content that you can use basically anywhere you need to use it. And that's one of the first things we always establish when we're talking about doing something new is where can we post it? I don't want to create content for you that doesn't make sense. You know, even when we started talking about this podcast, it was, okay, so obviously this will hit Apple and Spotify. So where else can we create versions of it? So we do a video version for YouTube.
So right now the podcast is set up on Spotify, Pandora, Google, and Apple.
You're on Pandora?
I've requested Pandora. I have not officially gotten confirmation that I am on Pandora yet.
That's awesome.
We'll see what happens. However, I'm on those platforms. Now, when it comes to video, again, one of the things we have discussed, and I believe I mentioned it, I'm not calling myself ugly. I have great self-esteem. I am very understanding that my facial expressions are not of YouTube quality. I don't have a YouTube mask. I don't. I just don't. My voice is so deep. I'm not saying it's the deepest in the world,
no, but it is.
It is deep to an extent of I sound angry a lot. I have a tone that sounds I'm being punished in a sense, right? And the face is the same way. Let's be real here. Even with the pups and everything, I'm talking to them and I have to talk in a really high voice with them because if I don't, even if I'm praising them like in their training and everything, they're scared. It's a deep voice, especially in the morning. Like when I first wake up, like I am probably right about here when it comes to deep voice. So I need to be cautious of that. And that's why we've kind of held off on video. But at the same time, process-wise, we've talked about this. Right now, the square format is going on YouTube.
Yes.
Long term, the goal is to get YouTube formatted, but have specific videos for YouTube outside of what we're already posting.
Yes.
Because there are things on different social medias that need to be presented differently.
Yeah.
And there needs to be different content. However, right now, the game plan is what social medias work for us, what social medias do I enjoy, and where am I getting the most audience?
Yes. And then also, too, what can keep the process fast to make sure we get your content to you in time?
Yeah.
Because there are times where we film so much or we record so much. And then on top of that, I have other projects I'm working on, too, where it's like, oh, man, I really need to make sure I get these videos to Adam on time to make sure that he has his marketing materials he needs for the next month.
Yeah.
And so it's coming up with a system and a process that doesn't take all of 4 fortnights.
Yeah.
And, you know, trying to make it all happen timely. And that's honestly where a lot of the most time crunch comes in, is in the edit. You know, you see a lot of everything we film in person and everyone is familiar with, you know, oh, I stand in front of a camera and I say things and then all of a sudden, like, it's just done. Like, no, there's a lot that goes into it.
That would be really nice if that's how it works. However, do you want to give the stat you gave me the other day of every 15 minutes of the podcast?
Yes. So for this podcast in particular, for every 15 minutes of this podcast, I edit it for about an hour. And that is to make sure that the flow is there. I remove any I remove any double words. I'm checking for background noise. Sometimes we've had a garbage truck driving in the background. If something goes off in my house, there are certain things that I listen for intently.
Yeah.
And I'm going through with a fine-tooth comb, probably a finer comb than I need to, but I want to make sure it sounds good.
And I think it sounds fantastic. That might be a little biased, but
except for this episode. Because of our deep gravel voices.
Watch all of this explaining, and for episode 2, you just don't edit any of this. You just leave this and go raw.
Editing can take a long time, and as you get more skilled and more proficient at it, it will become quicker and it will happen faster. But there are certain things that you always need to do that always are just time consuming with an edit.
Yeah, and content wise, you're going to find a rhythm of content because there's going to be a very similar structure to that content once you get more comfortable with it, right?
Yes.
And there's always going to be things you have to do no matter what.
Yes, absolutely. So whenever I'm editing, let's say Adam's Answers, I always lay it in the timeline, and then I have to check exposure. I have to reframe it for the new aspect ratio. Then I have to go through, listen to audio, remaster the audio to make sure it sounds good. And throughout the way, there's always little things I'm noticing that I'm not thinking about that I write down to fix. And so, for example, some of it is like the placement of the lav mic on Adam during some of the Adam's Answers.
Yeah.
Or maybe if I add a little bit more light at the top of the stairs, you'll have a more flat profile.
Yeah.
Maybe I can add some kind of light on the side so he looks a little bit more dramatic. We get like a fall of shadow on one side of the face.
Yeah, evil villain style.
Yeah, because we all know realtors are the root of all evil these days.
I could back that up.
But it's all these things that I'm taking into account and noticing, but making sure I still produce something that's of high quality and high caliber for what we're currently working with. But always trying to improve.
Yeah, and I think the always trying to improve is you and I bouncing ideas back and forth and kind of going here and there, and I have this idea, you have that idea. Like the next round of Adam's Answers and everything is no longer going to have an episode introduction.
Correct.
Because that was 5 to 10 seconds of silence going in of just introducing the episode number, the question, and then me finally starting to give answers. And now it's just going to jump into, here's the question on screen. Adam's already jumping into it immediately. And we're also not numbering within the video, right?
Yeah.
I should clarify.
Internally, it's numbered.
Internally, we're numbering it so we know what order we're in. However, we probably have 8 to 10 videos of each series in the archive.
Correct.
I'm posting weekly of each series, but I normally have 8 to 10 videos in Google Drive that haven't been posted yet.
Right.
Just in case I do go on vacation or anything like that, where we have the archives to back up the time gone. But one thing we have changed and actually hasn't actually been out to the public yet, probably will be by the time this episode comes out, is Adam's Answers is no longer doing the intro. We're just doing the question on screen. I'm answering it, jumping into it. We're not numbering because we've learned this, especially with the interest rates as of this year. If I'm answering a very relevant question at the time, but I'm 8 to 10 episodes behind and I can't post that because we have episode 38 or whatever, and I'm only on episode 28, we're not numbering anymore. So the audience doesn't know any difference. And we're just tossing this to the front of the line.
Right.
Because it has relevance now. It needs to be posted now. Those others, those can be answered at any time, really. Right. So there are things we're always changing with our process. And I mean, it's been 5+ years at this point, on and off. And I mean, there were times where I just took complete breaks. That's when I was on leadership of Keller Williams, and I just had other things going on, but I'm jumping back into it, and we've been back into it with the new series, that season, whatever we want to call it.
Well, and what's interesting too is numbering something sequentially works if there is a arc or a series flow to it. So, you know, there is nothing from Adam's Answers 2 that flows into Adam's Answers 22.
Yeah.
While numbering it was neat for us to be like, oh, look, we've done this many episodes. You can tell by looking at the number. Some audiences are actually turned off when they see that number. You know, if I were to tell you to start watching a show and you hop in and it's episode like 58, you're like, oh my gosh, I have like 57 other videos to watch. Like, why would I keep watching this?
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at your audience and just tell them, here's a video, they may just keep watching and watching and watching. It's that effect of not realizing how much content they're actually consuming. It's a little bit of trickery. And sometimes marketing is a lot of trickery, trying to get people to just continue to watch your content.
Yeah.
TikTok, their system works best not based on necessarily number of views, but how long you've watched the video.
Yeah.
And so, yes, like you may have a ton of views for something, but if they've only watched a second of your 8-second video, it's not going to continue to be shared because they don't see the viral aspect of it.
Yes.
And every algorithm is different. TikTok's got one you have to work specifically for. YouTube's got its own algorithm. Facebook has its own algorithm. And you're not ever going to create a piece of content that is the perfect catch-all for all algorithms.
Yeah, and that's one thing I do want to reiterate with us talking about being across 6 different platforms, because there's a lot of people who are going to be like, Adam, well, you're specifically stating certain things don't work for certain platforms, and you're using all of this to figure out which platforms do you want to end up using and focusing more hardcore on. And yes, the understanding is I'm posting on LinkedIn currently, and the videos we're doing might not be properly mitigated for LinkedIn audience. However, the content that we're producing is what I enjoy. What I'm really doing across these 6 platforms is understanding how are these doing on these different social media platforms? How are they performing? How's the reach I'm getting? And if this is the content I enjoy doing, this is the content I want to keep doing, what social medias am I going to stick with, and which ones are going to probably drop off, or maybe get a blog post or something else, and maybe not so much as attention. Because one thing I talk with agents all the time on is you need to define your audience. Like, look, you could get 500 views all day, every day on every single video. But if you're not defining your audience and you're going too broad, that 500 views might get you absolutely no leads. When if you were making content more specific to the audience you want to engage with, you could be getting 250 views, but you could be getting 2 leads out of it every single time. And that's what's more important, the views or the actual business.
Correct.
So you need to make stuff that you enjoy. You need to figure out what audience you're trying to speak to, because it's hard, but there are people who are not going to like you just because of your personality. And I learned that a long time ago. I'm still learning that, and that is okay. And it is absolutely fine. You just need to stick with you. Don't be a terrible person. Let's throw that out really quick. However, you need to figure out what's best for you, what your audience is, and go from there.
Yes.
Like, do I always come in hoodies and a hat and everything? Yes, absolutely. When I'm recording this kind of stuff, I change that up on the video. But would my ideal situation be clients where I can wear exactly what I'm wearing right now? Yeah, for sure. That'd be great. And at the end of the day, that's not where I need to be right now.
Yeah. Well, and looking at your content too, a lot of I think we've always kind of geared it towards a young adult audience who is trying to make their first steps into the world of real estate.
Yes.
And as a recent first-time home buyer, that series really works for someone like me. Oh, I need to understand, like, what is an escrow? Like, what does that mean? And, my mother was really helpful in the process, but there were certain things she would just be like, I'll just help you with that. I'll just do that for you. And I'm like, no, but I really want to understand
what's going on.
Yeah. So that way in the future, if I ever have to do this again and you're not around, what do I do? And so with a series like yours, you're really appealing to that like early 20s, mid 20s, early 30s audience who's buying their first house. And all the content is made in a certain way that it's easy to digest. So you can watch it in a minute, then go about your day. So you can watch a bunch of them if you have the time for it. If not, just come and see it whenever it gets posted. And, we post on a weekly schedule so that the audience knows when to expect the content. We're setting up these rhythms and processes so that way it flows in a way that your audience will continue to flow with it. And sometimes we're right on the mark. We know exactly what we're doing. We do it really well. Like, our videos are really well received. Sometimes we're a little off. Sometimes we tried different things that just don't work. Sometimes the visuals, they don't necessarily look the way that I'm happy with. We talk to each other. We acknowledge what we like, what we didn't like. We take that into the next episode.
Yeah.
One of the most important things you can do is just to be communicative with who you're working with.
Yeah.
And to understand there are things about real estate I will never understand. I will walk through houses. I will be able to come in and make, walk through videos and figure out the best way to do it. But like, if you were to ask me specific things about like inspection or, figuring out how, like, appraising a house, I would never be able to tell you. And the same goes this way. If I were to ask you what you think the proper color balance is for the lighting in the room, you'd probably be like, it's too yellow. I'd be like, yeah, okay. So there are things that we need to acknowledge about each other and respect about each other. I come from my professional background, you come from your professional background, and we come together and compromise in the middle to make sure that you get the content that you're happy with, and I produce content that I'm happy with.
Yeah.
And we found that middle ground. I really like the stuff that we do now.
Yeah, no, and I think that's just over time of figuring things out, figuring out a balance, and you saying, I don't want to do that, or me saying, I don't think that makes sense for this, and just being comfortable to do so and say so.
It also helps that we have a long friendship, that we are able to be open and honest with each other, which is why we both called each other ugly last episode.
Did we actually say the words ugly?
Well, it was implied. But no, it is helpful to create that friendship with the people that you're making content with. You are doing business together, but talk to each other, make that relationship, form that partnership. And then I promise you, it will be so easy going from there, because our process feels like butter. It is smooth. Yeah. And there are very rarely times where I feel like there are rough edges to what we do, because we've worked together on it so much that we've smoothed out those edges.
Yeah, and most of the time the rough edges are coming from new content and trying to hammer it out, and me being me and saying, I haven't even had time to think about what's next. I want to do this, but I don't know.
And then we sit down and we talk about it and we figure it out. I always think it's important to do it right in small ways and then grow it out. For the podcast, make sure we get the audio right. Once the audio is right, maybe we'll throw a video in. Who knows? Maybe eventually we'll go live. And like, I won't be able to edit that, so my heart will break. So every will be like, oh. But it's exponential growth, making sure that you have good content that gets better and better and better over time.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think next episode, we're going to kind of dig into how you can provide more content, videographer or not, right?
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and break into that in the next episode. But thank you, Brian, for being on again.
So people can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Brian Murray Media. I'll be posting hopefully weekly series. I know I promised last episode a bunch of things, and so hopefully I'm sticking with it.
We're sticking with at least the weekly series.
Yeah, at least if not cliffhanger, we'll see what happens. Maybe the week after this I'll have something. But no, you can always contact me at Brian Murray Media on Facebook or Instagram. I also have my email, brianmurraymedia@gmail.com. I'm always looking for people who want to create new work. And so if you have an idea or if you just need help with your marketing, feel free to reach out. I'd love to grab a coffee and we can discuss the ins and outs of what you're wanting to do.
Yeah, exactly. So feel free to follow Brian on those. They'll be linked in the Buzzsprout linked area.
Yeah.
And everything. But thank you so much for being on, sir, again. And I'm looking forward to talking some more.
Yeah, thanks for coming into my house and having me on your podcast.
I am here to serve. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Real Pulse of Real Estate. If you're looking for more content, follow me on Instagram or TikTok at I'm Cron Burgundy or Facebook at Adam Cron Realtor. Can't wait for you to join us next week.